Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How's everybody doing tonight? Um, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyid al-Anbiya wal-Mursaleen. Wa ala alihi al-Tayyibin. Wa ashabihi al-Ghurri al-Mayamin. Amma ba'd. So before I begin talking about what we discussed in our class, which was from Maghrib to Isha, alhamdulillah, and it's open for anybody as well if you'd like to join next week, inshallah. I want to take us back. Well, for the kids, it might be something that they're experiencing right now, but for the adults, I want to take us back to when we were kids like them, and when we were going to school, and we used to go to English class, or if we grew up overseas, maybe we went to, I'm not sure, what did you guys have, like Urdu class or Arabic class, whatever class you talked about literature in, okay? So you went to that class, and in that class you were discussing a book, or you were discussing a poem. You were discussing the words of a person. And what your teacher was doing is your teacher was saying, this is what the person said. Maybe the person said, for example, the sentence could have been, the boy played with the ball. Right? This is the statement. The boy played with the ball. And now you have the teacher that's dissecting this one sentence and extrapolating a bunch of stuff. Right? The teacher saying, what is the underlying purpose behind this? What did the author mean when he said this? And in reality, it's just some random guy from maybe a couple hundred years ago who was not even intending anything, that intense. The people at his time didn't even respect him as much as they do now, probably. But now you have people that are taking his words and they're trying to dig deep. And personally, I could be wrong here. Personally, I always felt that, what was the point? I always felt like, perhaps this person was writing something and he didn't actually mean, all this stuff. It wasn't actually that deep. It was the English teacher that wanted to make it like that. And the problem in that situation is because we are analyzing the words of a person who's limited. A person who's limited in their wisdom. That was the point of the situation. But when it comes to the Quran, we are analyzing the words of the one who's limitless. Right? The one whose wisdom is not confined. So if we were to only approach the Quran like how we approached literature in school, right, we would constantly be deriving wisdoms. We'd constantly be talking. We'd constantly be asking ourselves, right, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala trying to say here? So, and this is, of course, the study of tafsir, as everybody knows. Right? Tafsir, we're trying to understand the Quran. It goes just beyond interpreting or just beyond translating. Right? We usually think about it like, we'll recite a surah or something, and we'll go to the website and we'll just see, okay, what is the translation of what I'm saying? But the tafsir goes beyond that. You're understanding what the context of the ayah was. You're understanding what the ayah is actually telling you to do. So basically we studied this with our shaykh, and what he mentioned to us is that there's different kinds of tafsir. So you might have tafsir bil ma'thur, meaning that this tafsir comes just from traditions. The tafsir, the way the tafsir is explained is by means of ayat or ahadith. Or, for example, it could be a qawl al-sahaba, what the companions of the Prophet ﷺ said. Then you have another method of tafsir, which is tafsir al-ra'i, which is the tafsir that comes from other aspects. It could have been what the mufassir is thinking. He said that, I think this is what the ayah could mean here. Linguistically speaking, maybe this is what the implications could be. Another type of tafsir, you could say, is tafsir based on the maqasid. And we discussed the maqasid in terms of the fiqh last time. So this is the tafsir in terms of the maqasid, which means that basically you are analyzing the ayat in light of the objective, the underlying objective behind the ayat. So you're not just reciting, you're asking yourself, what is the purpose behind the ayat? So this is called al-maqasid. What is the meaning of al-maqasid? I just said it. The purpose. Yes, so what is the purpose behind it? What is the objective? Why are we actually reciting this? Okay? I'm going to quiz you also, so inshallah you have to remember everything, inshallah. So, basically, it allows you to now, open up the wisdoms inside the Quran. So, what we discussed in today's class was, you're going to pay attention now, inshallah? Come front row seat. Bismillah. So, what we talked about were ayat about man, ayat about the humankind, right? Because we all know that the Quran is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Okay, let me ask you a question. Who created mankind? Okay, so if you want to find out about mankind, who would you ask? Okay, nice. Exactly. For example, if you buy a car, okay, and you have an issue with the car, who will you take the car to? Who fixes the car for you? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fixes it through who? He uses the mechanic, right? Okay, exactly. So likewise, if you have an issue with man, that was good answer actually. If you have an issue with mankind, then you look to the one who created mankind. Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us everything we need for the car, for example, but He used it through the mechanic. So that is correct as well, alhamdulillah. So we looked at the ayat in terms of mankind. So there's basically 3 lessons that our Shaykh derived for us. Okay, and this is again the maqasid. So now we're looking at the objectives behind the ayat, okay? So what did maqasid mean again? The purpose, okay. And why would you use the maqasid? What does it do? Exactly. Okay. So now we're going to look at what the Quran tells about mankind. Because who created mankind? Okay, so who do you ask if you have a question about mankind? Exactly. Okay. So one of the first things that the Quran mentions about mankind, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. So basically, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even created mankind, He told the angels that I'm going to place a khalifa upon the earth, right? The khalifa. So one of the wisdoms that can be derived from this ayah is that before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even introduced mankind on the earth, He gave him such a high status. He called him the khalifa. He called him a khalifa. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. He said that we have honored the children of Adam, right? وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. And we carried them in the land and the sea. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again, He's honoring mankind. Okay? Because if you didn't hear this from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then what would you think of mankind? Right? That's why the people today say what? As long as you don't harm anybody else, whatever you do is okay. But that's wrong. Because you belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So you're not allowed to harm yourself even. It doesn't matter if you don't harm anybody else, you cannot harm yourself as well. Because you are the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you a high position. Right? And other ayat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in this regard. Just like for example, when, I'm going to ask you a question now. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Prophet Adam alayhi salam, okay, and remember he was with the angels, right? What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala order the angels to do? Who knows this? Okay, a sajda, out of respect, right? So he said, he told the angels to prostrate, make sajda in front of Adam, okay? You understand? You got this, you remember the story now? Okay, so that was done to show, to give the status, the honor to Prophet Adam alayhi salam. And what our Shaykh mentioned to us is that act itself is not only honoring Adam alayhi salam, it's honoring the progeny of Adam, mankind, the children of Adam that are to come. So that story, for us, we should feel that we're being honored, okay? We're being honored as well. Because just like Prophet, someone might ask, these are just the words of what the Shaykh said, someone might ask, okay, well, Adam alayhi salam was a prophet, and you're not a prophet. And the answer to that would be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Adam alayhi salam a message. And He also gave us the message too. Right? He gave Adam alayhi salam the message, and He also gave us the message. Right? Because of just like the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-ulama'u warathatul anbiya, that the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. Right? That's why there is no prophet after the Prophet ﷺ, because the ummah inherited the responsibility of giving the message. So that was the first point, that the Quran shows us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored man. Right? لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created man in the best form. Okay. Now number 2, what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? I'm going to quiz you on all of the ones that I mentioned, okay? What's number 1? Do you remember? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly, yes. Now the second point, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave mankind the ability to learn. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam alayhi salam the words of everything. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Adam the ability to learn. He gave mankind the ability to learn. And so what our shaykh mentioned to us, for example, is that when you tell yourself, or when you lose trust in yourself, for example, maybe you're studying Quran, or you're studying social studies, or mathematics, or whatever, and you tell yourself, I can't do this. So you lose trust in yourself. Well, if you lose trust in yourself, you're losing trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the ability to learn. So if you lose trust in yourself, you're actually losing trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because in another ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not burden a soul more than it can bear. So if you're given something, for example, if your dad tells you, go take out the trash. So now the command came, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who, obviously it wouldn't happen if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not decree for that to happen. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has intended that your father will tell you to go take out the trash. Now if you tell your father, I can't take out the trash, I can't do it. Is that true? No, you are able to do it. Because you would not be commanded unless you could do it. If you're told go do your homework, then it means you can do your homework. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the command to do what's required from you because you can do it. Okay? So likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the ability to learn. Right? So if you say, I can't do it, then you're actually losing trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's point number 2. So point number 1 is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has honored man. Okay? Remember, this is the last time I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to quiz you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has honored man. Okay? Number 1. Number 2, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave, oh yes, go ahead. Exactly, yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave man the ability to learn. And the last one that we will mention, inshallah, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests man. Okay, oh, wait, that's number 3. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests man. And again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, there's so many ayat that I could mention. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. Which means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that I will surely test you, or we will surely test you, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ from fear and famine and hunger and loss. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ from fear. وَالْجُوعِ وَالْجُوعِ means from hunger. You're going to go hungry. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might test you like that. وَنَقْسِم مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. And you might lose property, right? مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ, and life and crops as well. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. So glad tidings to those who are patient. So that's the third one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He is going to test man. However, we learn when we read all of the Quran and we read the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we learn that actually the test is not something bad. We don't say that, for example, in one of the hadith, it says that the most tested amongst the people are the prophets. So we don't say that the prophets have the worst of tests, because then we're acting as if the tests are something that's inherently bad. Well, no, that's wrong. It might seem bad to someone that does not have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like imagine you're going to watch a movie or something, and the movie has 2 parts. So you only watch part 1. And guess what happens in part 1? The superhero gets captured. And now you tell yourself, okay, well, this is so sad. It's over. The superhero is done. The villain won. Case closed. And then what happened? Your brother watched part 2. And then he comes to you and he's like, hey, well, did you watch part 2? Did you see what happens after that? So part 1 is, you could say, the dunya. So some people only watch part 1. Or maybe they only think part 1 is there. Then part 2 comes. And then they're like, whoa, subhanAllah. So the part one is the test in this dunya, and the part two is the reward in the akhirah. So since the prophets are the most tested of the people, it means that this test isn't something bad. This test is a means to raise our ranks. And as the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yusib min." He said that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills good for somebody, then He afflicts them with trials. He tests them, right? Just like when you're, for example, and the best of examples belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? For example, your teacher might call on you to ask a question, or your teacher might give you a test. Does that mean your teacher hates you? No, your teacher wants you to prove yourself, right? What happens when you get 100 on the test? What do you do when you get 100? You're happy, alhamdulillah. And then maybe you run to your baba or your mama and you show them, you're like, look, this is 100 on the test, right? And the example for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is even greater than that. Like on the Day of Judgment, the people that get the book in their right hands, they're just like showing everybody, like, look at my book, look at my record. It's better than getting 100% on an exam because this is the exam of your life. So that was point number 3, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests mankind. And is that test a bad thing? Do we say, oh, the test is a bad thing? No. Okay, no, what do we say instead? Yes, it's a means of cleansing you, and inshallah, you will see the rewards. If not in this life, then in the next, okay? So we'll end right now so you can go, inshallah. Just I need you to tell me all 3 points about mankind, and then you're allowed to leave, inshallah. Let's go with number 1. And try anything you can remember. What was the first thing? Okay, good. Good, good. Mhm. Okay, nice, nice. What's number 2? Yeah, number 2. Wait, what was the second one? Oh yeah, okay. Remember the second one? Okay, I'll give you a hint. It's about? You got it? You want to help them out? Mm. No, that was the first one. What's the third one? And what does the test mean? Is it good or bad? Why is it good? Mm. And because you'll be rewarded for it, inshallah. Okay? Inshallah. Okay, I think that should be it for now. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين. Jazakallah khairan for listening. Inshallah, it was beneficial for you. And next time I see you, I'm going to quiz you. Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan.